My name is Claire Whitmore, and 3 days before Thanksgiving, my mother texted me 5 words that made my stomach drop. Please don't come this year. That was a .no heart emoji, .no explanation, .no love you. Just 5 cold words from the woman who used to start planning Thanksgiving in August. The woman who once drove through a blizzard because she refused to let me spend the holiday eating microwave mac and cheese in my college dorm. I read the text 3 times, then a 4th. Something was wrong because my mother never said don't come. She said things like, drive safe, bring your appetite, can you stop for whipped cream? But never that. So I got in my car and drove the 4 hours anyway. And when I stepped into the house my father built with his own hands, I found my 63-year-old mother standing barefoot in the kitchen, wearing a stained apron, scrubbing roasting pans while my brother's wife sat at the dining table sipping wine and saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "Helen, if you're done pretending to clean, the glasses need refilling." Helen, not Mom, not Mrs. Whitmore, just Helen, like she was hired help, like she wasn't standing in the home she'd owned for 27 years. And when I looked across the room at my brother, he didn't say a word, he just kept eating. That was the moment I knew 2 things. First, my mother was hiding something, and second, whatever my brother and his wife thought they had done to her, it was about to end. They thought they had years. They had 72 hours. My father, Richard Whitmore, died 6 years earlier. Massive heart attack. Middle of the night. No warning. One moment he was asleep beside my mother. The next he was gone. My mother found him just before sunrise. She told me later she sat beside him for nearly an hour before calling anyone, not because she was in shock. Not because she didn't know what to do, because she wanted him to see one last sunrise. That was my mother, Helen Whitmore, quiet, steady, the kind of woman who believed love was proven through action, not words. She packed lunches, remembered birthdays, mailed handwritten thank you cards, kept extra blankets folded in the hall closet in case someone unexpectedly needed to stay the night. My brother Ryan and I grew up in that house, a white colonial on the edge of Ashford, Pennsylvania, 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch, maple tree in the front yard my father planted the year I was born. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. After Dad died, the house transferred entirely to Mom, everything legal, everything clear. He'd planned carefully, he always did. I knew because I handled most of the probate paperwork myself. I'm an estate paralegal in Philadelphia. Documents are my world. Deeds, trusts, transfers, probate filings. Paper tells the truth when people don single quotes at least that's what I believed. Ryan was 3 years younger than me. Growing up, he was the golden boy, funny, charming, the kind of person who could talk his way out of almost anything, and for most of our lives, he used that charm for harmless things, late homework excuses, parking tickets, borrowing money he always promised to repay. Then he married Vanessa, and everything changed. Vanessa Cole, pretty in a polished, expensive way, perfect teeth, perfect posture, perfectly rehearsed smiles, the kind of woman who could insult you while sounding helpful. The first time I met her, she looked around my mother's kitchen and said, "This house has amazing bones." With some updates, it could almost feel modern. My mother smiled and thanked her. I saw the criticism hidden inside the compliment. Mom didn't, or pretended not to. A year after their wedding, Ryan called. "We're moving in with Mom for a while," he said. "Why?" "To help her. She's alone out there, Claire. The place is too much for one person. Vanessa and I can take care of things." It sounded reasonable. responsible, even, and because I lived 4 hours away, because my job was demanding, because guilt is easier to quiet when someone offers a convenient solution. I let myself believe him. At first, Mom sounded happy. It's nice having company, she'd say. Vanessa is such a help. Ryan fixed the porch rail. But over time, something shifted. Our calls got shorter. Her voice got flatter. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd answer too quickly. Of course, sweetheart, like she'd practiced it. Then came the Thanksgiving text. Please don't come this year. And 4 hours later, I was standing in my childhood home watching my mother refill wine glasses for strangers while Vanessa issued orders from the dining room. That was the moment the lie cracked. I just didn't know yet how deep it went. I stayed for exactly 43 minutes that night, long enough to observe, long enough to count, long enough to realize this wasn't just family tension. It was a system. My mother stood up 9 times during dinner. 9 to refill drinks, clear plates, fetch extra rolls, bring more butter, replace napkins, wipe spills. Not once did she sit down. Not once did Ryan tell her to stop. Not once did Vanessa offer to help. And the strangest part, Mom acted like it was normal. When I finally hugged her goodbye, she held me tighter than usual. For one strange second, I thought she might say something, confess something, ask for help. Instead, she whispered, "Drive safe, sweetheart," the same words she'd said my entire life. But this time they sounded like surrender. The drive back to Philadelphia was silent. No music. No podcasts. No distractions. Just my thoughts replaying every detail. Vanessa's tone, Ryan sitting in Dad's chair, Mom's raw hands, the way she flinched every time Vanessa spoke. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew one thing. I wasn't imagining this. Something was deeply wrong. The next morning, I called our old neighbor, Margaret Ellis. She'd lived next door for 28 years, long enough to know every rhythm of that house. When she answered, I skipped small talk. "Margaret, what's happening with my mother?" Silence, then a slow exhale. "I've been waiting for you to ask that." Those 7 words made my stomach twist. Margaret told me everything she'd noticed. Mom no longer gardened. She stopped attending church, stopped hosting Sunday coffee, stopped answering the front door. Whenever Margaret came by, Vanessa answered, always smiling, always polite, always saying, "Helen's resting," or "She's overwhelmed today," or "We'll let her know you stopped by." But Mom never called back. Then Margaret said something that made me sit straight up. "About 18 months ago, your mother referred to it as Ryan's house." My blood ran cold. "What?" I corrected her. I reminded her Richard left it to her. She just smiled and said paperwork changes things. Paperwork, that word changed everything, because paperwork was my language, and if paperwork was involved, there would be records. Monday morning, I took a personal day. I drove to Ashford County Recorder's Office, the same building where my mother had once volunteered during election season. The same office where half the clerks still remembered me from childhood. Property searches are public record. 10 minutes later, I was staring at the official file for 214 Willow Creek Road. Owner, Helen Margaret Whitmore. Transfer date, 6 years earlier. Via probate from Richard Whitmore's estate. No subsequent transfers. No quitclaim deed. No title reassignment. No sale. No lien. Nothing. Legally, undeniably, unquestionably, my mother still owned that house. So why did she think otherwise? I paid for certified copies, slid them into my briefcase, and drove straight back to Ashford. This time, I used the spare key hidden under the stone planter beside the back porch. Some things hadn't changed. Mom was in the laundry room folding Ryan and Vanessa's clothes. She looked startled when she saw me. "Claire, I need to see what they showed you." Her face changed instantly. Fear, not confusion, not surprise. Fear. For several long seconds, she said nothing. Then she walked slowly to the guest bedroom, the smallest room in the house, the room Ryan once slept in as a teenager. Her room now. She reached into the closet and pulled out a manila folder labeled "Property Transfer." My hands were steady when I opened it. Years of legal training kept them that way. Inside was exactly what I expected, and somehow, far worse, a fake deed. At a glance, it looked convincing. Bold legal heading, formal language, signature lines. But to anyone who actually understood real estate law, it was laughably fraudulent. No county seal. No recording number. No notary acknowledgement. No parcel description. No filing stamp. No witness signatures. It was a prop, a cheap forgery printed on home office paper, and at the bottom was my mother's real signature, signed 18 months earlier. Underneath sat another page, this one handwritten by Vanessa, a residency agreement. In exchange for continued residence in the back bedroom, Helen Whitmore agreed to complete daily household responsibilities. Attached was a typed schedule: 6:00 a.m. kitchen prep, 8:00 a.m. laundry, 11:00 a.m. grocery errands, 2:00 p.m. exterior maintenance, 5:00 p.m. dinner preparation, 8:00 p.m. final cleanup. It wasn't assistance. It wasn't family support. It was domestic servitude dressed up as obligation, and my mother had signed it because she believed the first lie. I looked up at her. "Mom, did you really think you'd sign the house away?" Her eyes filled instantly. Vanessa said Ryan needed ownership for refinancing, that it was temporary, that if I didn't cooperate, they'd leave. There it was, the real weapon, not forged paperwork, fear of abandonment. Vanessa hadn't stolen my mother's house, she'd stolen her confidence first. And now I finally knew exactly how to take it back. I didn't confront Ryan that day. I didn't call Vanessa out. I didn't wave the fake deed in her face. I didn't threaten police. People like Vanessa survive through preparation. If cornered too early, she would deny everything, spin everything, turn my mother against me before I could prove the truth. No, this had to be precise, clean, undeniable. Paper tells the truth, but only if you present it at exactly the right moment. I sat across from my mother at the kitchen table and laid the certified county record in front of her. She stared at it for a long time. Then her fingers touched the county seal, lightly, like she was afraid it might disappear. "This means, it means the house is still yours." It always was. Her lips parted. No sound came out. I watched 20 months of fear begin to crack across her face. Then came the question I hadn't expected: if they leave, what happens to me? That was the moment I truly understood what Vanessa had done. She hadn't just manipulated my mother legally, she had rewired her emotionally, made her believe exploitation was the cost of companionship. I reached across the table and took both her hands. "Then you won't be alone, Claire. No. Listen to me. If they walk out tomorrow, I will rearrange my entire life before I let you spend one night here feeling abandoned. You hear me?" Her eyes filled. For several seconds she simply looked at me. Then, slowly, she nodded. That was all I needed. The next morning I called Martin Keller, senior partner at my law firm, estate attorney, meticulous to the point of obsession. He'd known my father, had drafted his original will. When I explained everything, there was a long silence. Then he said, "Come in. We're fixing this today." By noon, we had prepared a new deed, a proper transfer, legally airtight, not because I wanted ownership, but because if Ryan and Vanessa decided to contest anything, temporary transfer gave me legal standing to act immediately. Protection first, questions later. That afternoon, I drove my mother to a notary in Ashford, the same woman who'd notarized my parents' refinance papers 15 years earlier. When she saw Mom, she smiled warmly. "Helen Whitmore." My goodness, it's been ages. Something changed in my mother's expression at being recognized, seen, remembered. She read every line of the deed carefully, and I watched realization wash over her. The fake document Vanessa had shown her had looked legal. This one felt legal. Real formatting, real seals, real acknowledgement block, real parcel description. Years of courthouse experience lit behind her eyes. She knew, finally, fully knew, she'd been deceived. Her hand trembled only once before she signed. When the notary stamped the final page, my mother exhaled so deeply it sounded like grief leaving her body. I filed it immediately, officially recorded by 4:17 p.m. Now came the hard part, timing. I wanted witnesses, neutral ones, people who couldn't be manipulated later. So I waited. Thanksgiving, the same holiday where Vanessa had humiliated her, the same table, the same audience, but this time, the script would be mine. Over the next 10 days, I prepared everything: certified original ownership records, new deed transfer, photographs of the fake deed, photographs of the labor agreement, time-stamped scans. Every document organized in chronological order. I built the folder the same way I'd build an evidentiary packet for court: claim, contradiction, proof, intent, resolution. Then I called Margaret. "Can you come Thanksgiving evening?" She didn't ask why. Of course, she already knew. The morning of Thanksgiving, my mother texted me again. "Please don't make trouble." Not "don't come." Please don't make trouble. Fear talking, hope hiding underneath it. I replied with 4 words: "Trust me, I'm coming." That evening, I drove through sleet toward Ashford with the white evidence folder on the passenger seat. Every red light felt too long, every mile too slow, because for the first time since this began, I wasn't driving toward suspicion. I was driving toward reckoning. The driveway was already full when I arrived. Ryan's truck, Vanessa's SUV, 3 unfamiliar sedans. The exact same setup as the year before, almost like they'd recreated the scene on purpose. I carried the white folder under my arm and walked to the front door. Vanessa answered, and there it was again, that tiny half-second delay before her smile appeared. The flash of irritation before the performance began. "Claire, what a surprise. Happy Thanksgiving." I stepped inside. The smell hit me first: turkey, rosemary, cinnamon, my mother's labor, filling every room. And there she was, Dot, in the kitchen, same gray apron, same tired shoulders, same careful smile. But this time, when our eyes met, she knew. She knew what was in the folder, she knew what was coming, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, I saw something behind her fear: hope. Dinner unfolded exactly as I'd expected. Vanessa directed, Ryan laughed, their guests ate and drank, and my mother served. I counted again: 8 trips from kitchen to dining room, 8 reminders of exactly why I was there. When dessert plates were cleared and Vanessa leaned back in her chair, swirling red wine and crystal she'd taken from my mother's china cabinet, I stood. "Could I have everyone's attention for just a moment?" Conversation faltered. Ryan frowned. Vanessa smiled tightly. "Claire, If this is one of your dramatic little speeches, actually, I said, setting the white folder in the center of the table, it's documentation. That got everyone's attention. I opened the folder slowly, deliberately, and removed the first document. This is the certified property record for 214 Willow Creek Road, obtained directly from Ashford County Recorder's Office. I placed it flat on the table. It shows uninterrupted ownership by Helen Whitmore since my father's death 6 years ago. Ryan sat straighter. Vanessa's smile thinned. I removed the second document. This is the deed my mother signed 3 weeks ago, transferring legal authority to me for her protection. Properly notarized, properly recorded, fully valid. Vanessa's glass stopped halfway to her lips. And then came the third page, the fake deed. I held it up for everyone to see. This, I said evenly, is a forgery. Silence, not awkward silence, the kind of silence that changes the temperature of a room. Vanessa laughed, too quickly, too sharply. That's ridiculous. Helen signed that herself. She did. Because she was lied to, I pointed to the missing elements one by one. No county seal. No filing number. No legal property description. No witness acknowledgement. No notary certification. It's worthless, legally meaningless. A fabricated document printed on home office paper. One of the guests leaned forward, a middle-aged man in a navy sweater. He studied both documents side by side, then slowly looked at Vanessa. She's right, that was the crack. I saw it happen in real time. The exact second Vanessa realized control was slipping, her posture changed, her voice sharpened. Ryan, say something. But Ryan was staring at the papers like he'd never seen them before. And maybe he hadn't. Or maybe he finally understood what he'd chosen not to question. I laid out the final page, the labor agreement. The room went still again. I read it aloud, every line, every task, every degrading instruction my mother had been manipulated into following. By the time I reached the signature block, one of Vanessa's guests had physically recoiled. Another quietly set down his fork. No one looked comfortable anymore. Good. They weren't supposed to. I turned to my mother. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, hands clasped tightly, face pale, waiting, not for me, for herself, for the decision she'd been too afraid to make alone. Mom, I said softly, who does this house belong to? The room held its breath. Her lips parted. For one terrifying second, I thought fear might win. Then she lifted her chin, and in a voice louder than I'd heard from her in years, she said, "It belongs to me." Everything changed. Vanessa shot to her feet. "Helen, don't be ridiculous after everything we've done for you, done for me." My mother stepped forward. No apron strings in her hands. No lowered eyes. "You moved me into my son's childhood bedroom. You made me cook every meal, clean every dish, wash your clothes, mow my lawn, and you made me believe I should be grateful for it." Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. My mother looked at Ryan, and somehow that was worse, because disappointment cuts deeper than anger. "You sat at your father's table and watched it happen." Ryan flinched. One of the guests stood, then another. No dramatic confrontation. No shouting. They simply gathered their coats and left. Quietly. As if wanting distance from the ugliness they just witnessed. The front door closed behind the last of them, and suddenly it was just us. My mother, Ryan, Vanessa, me. I slid the final page across the table. A formal notice to vacate, prepared that morning, legally enforceable. "You have 72 hours, I said. Vanessa stared at it. Her face had gone completely white. "You can't do this, actually," I said. "I already did." She turned to Ryan, desperate now. Say something, and finally, he did, but not to defend her. He looked at our mother and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then he stood and walked upstairs to pack. The house was silent after they left, not empty, silent, and there is a difference. Empty feels abandoned. Silent feels peaceful. For a long time, none of us moved. My mother stood beside the dining table, staring at the front door. As if she couldn't quite believe they were really gone. Then slowly, she reached up and untied her apron, the same gray apron she'd worn nearly every day for almost 2 years. She folded it carefully, placed it on the counter, and walked to the kitchen table. She sat down. It was such a small thing, a woman sitting at her own table, and somehow it felt monumental. Margaret arrived 20 minutes later carrying her usual apple pie. She took one look at the room, the scattered documents, my mother's face, and understood. Without a word, she set the pie on the counter and wrapped her arms around her. My mother broke then, not loudly. No dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears, the kind that come when a body finally realizes it doesn't have to stay braced for impact anymore. I sat beside her, Margaret sat across from us, and together, we simply let the silence exist. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For one panicked second, I expected to hear movement, cabinet doors, running water, the sound of my mother already working. Instead, nothing. At 8:17, she finally came downstairs in her robe, hair loose, barefoot, still half asleep, the latest she'd slept in for years. She looked almost embarrassed. "I didn't mean to sleep so late." "Good," I said. "Do it again tomorrow." That made her smile, a real smile, small but real. Over coffee, she said something I'll never forget. I think I knew. I looked up. She stared into her mug, not at first, but eventually. "I think part of me knew those papers weren't right. Then why didn't you fight?" Her answer came so quietly I almost missed it, because being used felt less frightening than being alone. That sentence stayed with me, because that's how manipulation works. It doesn't begin with force. It begins by making someone believe their fear is proof they should surrender. That weekend, we started reclaiming the house. We moved her things back into the master bedroom, the room she'd shared with my father for 31 years. I rehung their wedding portrait above the dresser, placed Dad's old fishing cap on its hook beside the closet, opened the curtains wide. Morning light spilled across the quilt. My mother stood in the doorway, with tears in her eyes. "I thought I'd never sleep in here again." "It was always yours." She slept there that night. The following Sunday, Margaret came over with pie, just like she had for decades. This time, no one stopped her at the door. The week after that, my mother went back to church. Then she restarted her garden. Then she hosted coffee on the porch, one small reclaimed ritual at a time. Ryan texted twice. The first message said, "I know sorry isn't enough." The second said, "Can I come see Mom?" I showed her both. She read them carefully, then handed my phone back. Not yet. No anger. No hesitation, just certainty, and that was how I knew she was healing, because she was choosing for herself. As for Vanessa, she posted several vague messages online about toxic family systems and betrayal. I ignored everyone. Truth doesn't need defending when documentation exists. 3 months later, on the first warm morning of spring, I drove to Ashford and found my mother in the garden planting tulips, the same pale yellow variety my father used to order every year. She was kneeling in fresh soil, sunlight in her hair, dirt on her hands, and she looked more like herself than she had in years. When she saw me, she smiled. Guess what? What? I adopted a dog. A golden retriever puppy barreled around the side of the house like a tiny hurricane. She laughed, actually laughed, and for a moment, standing there beneath the maple tree my father planted the year I was born, I felt something settle inside me. Peace. Later that afternoon, we sat on the porch drinking iced tea while the puppy slept at her feet, the same porch where she'd once sat alone. After my father died, only now she wasn't alone, and she never would be again. Sometimes I think back to that first text. Please don't come this year. 5 simple words, a warning disguised as rejection. If I'd listened, if I'd stayed home, my mother might still be scrubbing dishes in her own kitchen. Believing gratitude required obedience. So if someone you love suddenly pulls away, if their voice sounds rehearsed, if they insist they're fine when every instinct tells you otherwise, look closer, ask harder questions, show up anyway, because love isn't always gentle. Sometimes love arrives carrying paperwork, and sometimes saving someone starts with refusing to believe the story they've been forced to tell. My mother owns her house. She always did. She just needed someone to remind her.